Yo, how's it going? And today, we're going to be ranking every dual attunement talent. Now, over all the builds I've made, I've used most of these talents, but I will have to say this is my opinion. But without further ado, let's get to the list. And unfortunately, the first talent is Stormlink. This talent is just straight bad. No, seriously, it's really bad. The requirements are pretty high. And what do you get for it? You get a talent that sometimes just nerfs you. What do I mean by this? To give you a rundown, all your Gale mantras will be imbued with flashes of lightning, which, by the way, all it does is convert your Gale damage to elemental damage. This talent is just a straight downgrade if your opponent is using thunder armor, like Ferryman's Coat. Moving on, we have Voltaic Conductor. This talent is just also not very strong. While not completely nerfing you like Stormlink, it still requires some setup, requiring a conductor rod, along with you using some thunder mantras that don't really rely on initial hits. The biggest example is of course Rising Thunder. And really you only get 20% more chip. Like, that isn't really going to change a match at all. And with our last talent in the bad category, we have Dark Receiver. This talent is a lot like Stormlink, requiring a static link. All it does is it steals ether from anyone you have linked at the same time. Now this doesn't sound that bad. However, having that many links on that many people is pretty hard to set up, especially when it deteriorates over time. I mean, can you imagine uppercutting 4 separate people and then using a shadow mantra? And now we're on to the OK talents, which starting us off is Pressure Detonation. Now we're going to get to the point where the dual attunement talents are going to be very similar to each other, as this talent has a better version of it farther up the list. But what does this talent do? All it does is when you block break someone with a shadow mantra, which means Deep Spindle does not work with it, it applies Suffocate. Only 2 shadow mantras are insta guard breaks, and even then they're not the fastest, and you're really better off doing pure Gale. Moving on to number 7, we have Like and Subscribe. No, but seriously, I'm trying to hit 3K subscribers, and when I do, I will no longer have to gatekeep my builds in my server. So if you can help me reach that goal, it would help me out a ton. But back to the actual ranking. Then we have the final talent in the OK category, which is Frozen Web. Now this talent also suffers from the same as Dark Receiver, and there's a better version of it later down the list. All it does is when you have a link attached to someone and you hit a crit, you apply 7 seconds of chilled. This isn't really going to help you win any matches. And with it just being not that good, it really suffers for it. Now we move on to the good talents, which starting us off is Temperature Shock. Now this talent alone is not that good, but obviously we all know the talent that comes later down the list is going to be very good pair with it. But pretty much all this talent does is it detonates crystals when you hit someone with a flame mantra. But you kind of want a bunch of crystals for more damage. So alone this talent isn't really that crazy, but it's still much better than everything that came before. Moving on, we have Scorched Peak. Now this talent is the better version of Pressure Detonation. Instead of just applying Suffocate, block breaking means more damage, which is infinitely better than something you can easily get from just hitting a singular Gale mantra. Now we're on to Twisted Puppets. Now you might be surprised to see this here and not a little higher, but this path really suffers from not being that good, which is especially true when you're playing a high shadow build. This path kind of nerfs shadow quite a bit, and makes flame not really the best either. It's fun to mess around with, and it looks cool, but really isn't that crazy. Now we're on to the top 3, which I consider good talents, which starting us off is Fan the Flames. This talent, despite getting nerfs, is still pretty good, especially with the classic Burning Servants combo. Now it does really depend on your playstyle, but this talent can make a lot of builds very strong. And now we have my personal favorite, which is Freezing White. What it does is that every single time a Haunted Gale hits, it makes it apply chilled every time, for 7 seconds at that. This just makes Gale super strong. Slowing down your opponent is very valuable and stopping their healing. But now we have the strongest dual attunement talent, which is Volcanic Glass. This talent is just really strong. It makes Eruption and Crystal Path very strong together, and really if you're caught off guard, it can do way too much damage way too quickly, which just makes this talent way stronger than it needs to be. But that's the full ranking. Do you think I got anything wrong in this list? Let me know in the comments. Like and sub. See ya.